and welcome to the Systems Engineering Podcast. Today's guest is Ivan Mactaggart. Ivan is an innovative leader specializing in establishing cutting-edge engineering capabilities from the ground up. He's currently the head of engineering, systems and digital for the East West Railway Company, which is building a new railway line running from the east to the west across southern England, and will be connecting Cambridge and Oxford together. And we'll speak a little bit about this in the episode. Ivan has had many senior engineering roles globally, including with MBDA, the missile company, and DSTL, which is a British defense research organization. In today's conversation, however, we'll mainly be focusing on his roles he's had with INCOSE UK, including being president in 2016 to 2018. And I think this is a good episode for understanding what it's like to get involved with INCOSE UK. And just before the episode starts, reminder that if you haven't signed up to the newsletter, you should do. Just go to joshuasutherland.com/newsletter, and it'll keep you up to date with the latest episodes and other things that you'll find interesting. And there's a free gift when you sign up, so you should do it even just for the free gift. So hope you enjoy the episode. Oh, great. So today's guest is Ivan. Ivan was the INCOSE UK president 2016 to 2018, and also has a long career in systems engineering at a range of different organizations in the UK. So welcome, Ivan.
Good afternoon. Very, very pleased to be here, Doctor.
Okay. Would you be able to explain what it's like to be an INCOSE UK president and what it involved over your tenure?
Well, I think I can explain from my perspective, my point of view. I think your tenure as president is almost unique to you, and you have ideas that you want to try and execute during your tenure. And each president has a different flavour of what they want to bring. And that was clear to me when I was president-elect. And I've been very fortunate enough to have been exposed to council before being president-elect, because I'd been fortunate, I've been honoured to be elected by the INCOSE UK Advisory Board as its chair for 2 years prior to that. So I had an inkling of the ways of working and got an insight to a number of presidents and how they were working. Mike Wilkinson, Alan Harding, and obviously Richard, who was my immediate predecessor. And you get so that the 2 years as president-elect, if you like, gives you an opportunity to start thinking about, okay, I've got 2 years now. What do I really want to do? What can I do to try and move us forward as a learned society, as that institution? So I can kind of probably go around what my thinking was and what I wanted to try and do and leave for those that have succeeded me since. Some of which is, we're seeing it going to some exciting new things now that were kind of hopes of mine, but you see the likes of Kirsty Ackroyd-Wallace and then Ian Gibson and now Malcolm Thomas, and go forward, Andrew Pemberton, what they are going to see happen in their have happened in Ian's and Malcolm's presidency, and what was then happen again in Andrew's. And it's you can see how we really are moving forward as a learning society, and it's, for me, very honouring and very humbling actually to look back and have been one of those that's been fortunate enough to be asked to help move the organisation forward. And of course you don't do it alone. There's an incredibly gifted set of people that sit on the council, and I was very, very fortunate with those that supported me in that time. So it's it sometimes feels a lonely post, but actually you've got a lot of support there.
That's great to hear. And what did you sort of view as your priorities to get done when you were president?
Well, my view was that we were on the, we wanted to. Sorry, let me go back a bit maybe with that. INCOSE had been driving for some time a real desire to really ramp up its membership, and that needs certain foundations to be in place. I think we were seeing a good trajectory for INCOSE UK. I think during Richard's time, Richard Beasley, we got over the 1,000 member mark for the first time, and we may have even been the first chapter to get over that 1,000 mark after Washington Metro. But for me, it was, well, okay, look, if you really want to kind of do that kind of thing, and it is about, you know, maybe doubling your membership or whatever, you need to change the way that you may be thinking, because it's not an insignificant task. And so for me, that meant, right, we really need to understand what our business is. And that might sound obvious as a learning society. It's obviously, you know, progression of discipline and the support of people in it, but it's not actually that obvious when you start to unpick it. We were a very stable organisation. We had a very stable financial platform. You know, huge thanks there to Peter Lister, who was still finance director when I became president, and I'd been finance director for about 15 years by the time he eventually decided somebody else has to do this. You know, he'd left us a huge, you know, very stable platform. We weren't really worried too much about our underpinning financial health, but where did we invest? You know, where were the best places to invest? What did we really know about what we were doing? Where we were committing those funds, to me, wasn't particularly clear. And having come from a bit of a in the past, having done a bit of business turnaround in the retail motor industry and in the sort of retail construction industry with a couple of very well-known brands, one of the things I was very clear on there is you had to understand pretty much where all your money came from and where it all went. And that gives you an opportunity to then look and go, right, okay, where are the opportunities for us to look at maybe doing things differently? What more can we bring in terms of things that systems engineers will value and want to invest their money, or if they've got to pay their own membership, or their company's money if the company supports that membership, there's got to be something for them in it, otherwise why do it? The other thing was to try and sort of create opportunities for people to volunteer to do things that they cared about enough to want to go and spend their spare time doing, or indeed convince their employers that it would be very much the employer's benefit to get engaged with. So, you know, that was kind of my underpinning thing. I wanted to be in a position where I handed over a platform. You know, I work in infrastructure and rail at the moment. So if you take one infrastructure, I wanted a really solid set of foundations that we could then leap forward on. Mm-hmm. The key thing in doing that to me, though, is there was one thing above all that we would have to achieve at some point, that we had to do, but we had to add the business in first because it was part of the journey, and that was we had to become a professional engineering institution in our own right, to be licensed in our own right, rather than be an affiliate. That was really clear to me. And it was clear to me, you know, we did some great work, and I think Mike Wilkinson led this in his time of becoming an affiliate and offering members the opportunity to become chartered. And that was a significant event. And there was always the desire in Mike's council and in Alan's and Richard's, and, you know, those between Mike and myself, to want to eventually make that step and become a fully licensed member of the Engineering Council and a PEI in our own right. But you have to achieve some certain things in order for the Engineering Council to get through their quite extensive and rightly rigorous procedure. And one of those is actually having a firm business.
Rightly rigorous. Yeah, it's important in the sense you don't want people just setting up institutions that have a stamp of approval and they're not worthy of.
Yeah, one of the three criteria is, you know, having firm business understanding, firm understanding your risk, firm financial footing. You have to prove all those things. And I've been lucky enough that I'd helped to steer through, and I say helped, you know, Ian Preston was the professional development director at the time, unfortunately couldn't attend our reaccreditation as affiliate one year. And I had the incredible support of Lynn Davis and the professional development manager at Dot the Eye and those folk to help me. But we together steered through the reaccreditation, and during that reaccreditation, the Engineering Council sends one of their people, and they send a chair of a licensing panel down. And off the back of that, I was invited to apply to join the Engineering Council as a Quality Assurance Committee member, which I duly did, and then served for 6 years. In fact, I only stood down earlier this year. It was April of this year that I finally stood down from that role. But it taught me all the things I needed to know, or we needed to know in INCOSE to be able to make that leap. So, I was chairing licensing panels of some of the big institutions. I won't name them because of confidentiality, but I was chairing, I was the panel chair for one of our major institutions and a couple of the smaller ones as well. So it gave me a really good insight to what we had to do, because I was leading the challenge, if you like, to the institution trying to get through. And then coupled with the work that Kirsty Ackroyd-Wallace then did, who succeeded me as president, and who did all the hard yards from INCOSE point in getting us through. She was president by the time we actually put the licensing through. So for me, it was about getting the foundations right and allowing that step to happen, if that's what the members wanted to do and the council wanted to do. And that then Kirsty led and did pretty much all, well, actually did a lot of the legwork in writing all of our processes. I helped to review that, and then working with the Institute of Explosives, the IfSE, to have a joint model. That then the reason for going to joint model is when you're a smaller institution, it's difficult to prove to the Engineering Council you've got the bandwidth from the volunteer pool to support all the things you need to do. So the Engineering Council put a proposition to us that we might want to think about a joint board. And we duly did that. We sat down, we thought about it, and we thought it was a damn good idea. And ultimately it was, and it's led to, Kirsty being able to steer that through. I was with Kirsty when we attended the Engineering Council for that review and have the assessment of our application. And it was quite rigorous. It needs to be. I knew what I was like as a chair. So, but subsequently, Kirsty was able to announce at the conference that year that we were now at last a PEI. And then Ian took that further forward. So, for me, can I get us to somewhere where we can start to build these things up? And the reason it's important, Joshua, the reason it was really important to be a PEI, it's not just about offering professional registration to members, which is incredibly important and is a real driver for people wanting to be a member. Engineers want that recognition. They want to achieve that gold standard, which is the registration process, whether it's incorporated, chartered, or engineering technician for that matter. Engineers want to do that. It's the accolade given by your peers. But what it does for the institution as well is it gives it a voice that you don't get unless you are one of the full licensees. And what we've been able to be since is, we now have a voice in the National Engineering Policy Centre that is coordinated by the Royal Academy for Engineering, and that brings all of the PEIs together to give a collective voice for engineering. So we're now on that table. And so the next step of that is then to look, how do we then take our small institution and make it this thing that really is, we all see ourselves as the forefront for systems engineering in the UK, but the reality of it is there are still far more systems engineers sitting in the IET or other institutions than there are in INCOSE UK. We're seeing this trajectory move, and I think the next step that Ian Gibson kicked off and is still leading under Malcolm's stewardship now. We've seen the vote go to the Institute for Systems Engineering, which will come up. And again, it's not about cutting our ties in INCOSE, far from it. We're going to still cement that. We're still part of that global network. But what that does is it enables us to generate even more benefit for a UK member. We can start looking at fellowships, which is subtly different to the way INCOSE does it in the UK. You can apply for Royal Charter. The potential is to see chartered systems engineers going forward. So for me, and it wasn't necessarily about achieving that or IfSE, or, you know, I didn't particularly think about too many of those things, but it was for me about putting that set of firm concrete foundations in there that meant we could start to really achieve some significant things and get the institution recognised in the UK as an institution that's perhaps not equal in numbers, but it's equal in terms of status and standing for systems engineers with a UK focus, but without breaking any of that international that international link. And, you know, again, with Ian Gibson was instrumental in leading this, you know, during my time. It's renegotiating the MOU that we had with INCOSE at that time, which gave us a better return on the membership fee. So it was that was all about, for me, it really was about foundations, which I've probably whittled on long enough about now.
No, it's really fascinating, because often these sort of foundational pieces, you know, like literally the foundations of a building, we don't see them, but of course are, you know, super important, or the building collapses. And sort of seeing behind.
I'm probably remiss, actually, because I should bring out another couple of things that I thought were absolutely fantastic, and they have nothing to do with me. They weren't my ideas. If anything, probably I created a condition where they could come, if at all. But what also happened inside was, I'm incredibly proud that he chose to do this during my time. John Holt coming up with the guys, the series of guidebooks that he has done, and that series of books now has got bigger, more publications. You know, he started off with Think Engineer in Richard's time, and then had this idea of those like mini systems engineering.
Don't panic book.
Yeah, the Don't Panics. And to have that launched during my time was, you know, it was an incredibly good feeling, because it, you know, we were, and the significance of that was we'd really got a handle of publishing and being able to publish our own stuff and how that worked. And we could do that because we understood the money. You know, bluntly, we understood the money, understood it better. And again, thanks to Peter Lister's work, that we were able to do that. So, you know, an incredibly great time to be involved, a fantastic time to be president. There were some hard yards. There were some really hard yards. You know, there were some, you know, very, very late nights around some of that. You know, I think some of the latest nights were probably post-presidency, when, you know, I was trying to help Kirsty with getting the process sets together to apply for the PEI. But you know, yeah, I mean, it was a fantastic time. I'm very, very honoured to have been president of INCOSE UK, and I was very honoured to have been president in a particular time slot I was in.
That's really great to hear. And I think what it sounds like, there's been a lot of, as you say, sort of foundational work that is aiming to get INCOSE UK, or should we be calling it the Institute for Systems Engineering? Like, question when
it will be, not quite there, but it will be, and you know, I'm looking forward to that being announced.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the flyer, so
yeah,
it's on its way.
You know, I think it's great news, and you know, the work that Ian Gibson and others, you know, have done, you know, to get us there, and Malcolm, Thomas, and, you know, Andrew will take it forward. And what I would say as well is that these guys are all great friends of mine. You know, you know, Richard Beasley, what a top bloke, you know, great friend. You know, was a guest at my wedding. A number of systems engineers guests at my wedding about 8 years ago now, nearly. You know, Malcolm I see quite regularly. We're working on the same project at the moment. And you know, Ian and I have our paths across quite a lot since. And Andrew and I used to work together at AWE many years ago, so it's a quite close family, and it's fabulous. You know, Alan Harding and I used to touch base very, very regularly, and Mike Wilkinson and I passed across in professional lives from time to time as well. So and that's just the immediate and past presidents. You know, if I look at you know, John Holt has been a friend of mine for well over 10 years now. You know, along with Simon. John was the first person I really got to know when I joined INCOSE and INCOSE UK, and I consider him to be a very dear and good friend, and along with others, Hazel Woodcock, who's comms director. In fact, Hazel and Hazel had an idea to take a panel session to IS in Dublin next year, and has invited me to be part of that panel. So yeah, you know, it's a fantastic thing to be, and you make huge amounts of friends around that table.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. So I think any person who is wanting to get involved with INCOSE UK, they would find it to be a friendly and welcoming place.
It is. It has been for me. I found it, you know, to be a fantastic organisation. It's not without its challenges. All organisations have challenges. You know, not everything is rosy every single day. There's some tough things to do. You know, when you are, and it will become more so with the IfSE, to be honest, because the rules change, the way that we're registered in the United Kingdom as a business changes. But you know, one of the things you have to realise when you are president is you have a legal obligation for a duty of care to the business. There is legal accountability. You know, you are a director registered at Companies House, along with the president-elect, the immediate past president, the finance director, and the company secretary. So, you know, it was never lost on me that there was a degree of responsibility that came with that. Not just about having the fun and pushing the systems engineering for, you know. So a part of the drive for the foundations was, you know, recognising that duty of care, quite frankly.
Yes, because it's and you're also you're building on something that has been handed to you from another generation of a person, and we have a responsibility to care for that thing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, tracing all the way back to Derek Hitchens, you know, the very first president. You know, he you know, Bill Bardo and those guys that came together to found it back then, you know, had that foresight to say, look, there's something here that we believe there's a compelling reason to try and create a UK chapter here. And look at it, and you look at how it's grown and adapted from those beginnings. You know, yeah, there's a strong legacy, and you know, I look down that list of presidents, and you know, I feel that I'm in hallowed company, quite frankly, and sometimes wonder how the hell did I manage to be in that company. But I was, and I'm. But you're right, that legacy is incredible, actually, and you think of what each president has done and moved forward, and how we've grown. It's fantastic, really.
What was your journey from presumably at some point you joined INCOSE as a member, and then you rose to be the president? What is the stepping stones you took?
Well, it wasn't planned. That I can tell you. I joined INCOSE quite late on. I actually came into systems engineering, as we would understand it from an INCOSE perspective, quite late on, actually. It was only really in the sort of late 2000s, around 2008, really, when I really came across it, around that time. I'd been really a systems practitioner. My earlier academic thinking was around systems thinking, system practice. And it's still largely informed from that. But I was a systems engineer at AWE, and responsible for the leading the systems engineering component within delivering product lifecycle management within AWE at that time, and promoting systems engineering and systems engineering process sets. And I was asked by our chief engineer to take over our UCAB rep spot from one of our other senior engineers who was going to move on to become, I think, head of one of our engineering divisions at that time. She was going to go out and fundamentally, as a group lead, wouldn't have had the bandwidth to do it. So chief engineer asked me if I would take it on. It wasn't really an ask, it was more of a tell, quite frankly. But it wasn't something that I was averse to, bluntly. I was very, very happy to go and do that. So I went from being a lay member to being our rep probably within a year or so of joining. I think I'd attended one conference by then or something like that. ISEC 2010, I think. It was, I think, the first conference I went to. And then, you know, I was asked to become the UCAB representative. And then when Chris Lamb, who was the UCAB chair at the time, again, another long-standing friend, Chris, was standing down from that role, deciding to move on and stand down from that role, was looking around for, there's a few folk that said, why don't you chair it? I'm one of these people, if I get involved in something, I've got to get involved in it. And I kind of got involved in the UCAB quite a bit. And subsequently I was elected. And it was an election, it wasn't a dummy election, it was contested. And probably quite close. I seem to recall. I'm not really sure, but anyway, I was elected as UCAB chair, and towards the back end of that time, I was elected for a 2-year process, and towards the back end of that time, I'd moved from AWE to DSTL, new change direction, new change career, and it's time for me to move on. I wasn't the UCAB rep at DSTL, but was one of our other principals, and I hadn't really thought much about it other than being a Lang member and still enjoying it. The two things then happened. I was asked on my sort of first week in DSTL, right, this INCOSE UK stuff, you're coming off the end of it, what more could you do? That it sounds like a thing we should be interested in. I said, well, we've already got a rep in there, Professor Bob Madahar was at the time, or David Oxon might have been, or Bob Madahar, one of those two. And it was, well, look, I said, well, the presidential election's coming up. I probably could have a stab at that. I think, I might have some reasonable support. That coincided with a couple of colleagues from the UCAB and folk who've been on council, because as a UCAB chair, you're a member of the council, saying, look, why don't you stand? We'd support you. And I thought, well, okay. All right. So I said to it was our delivery chief in DSTL. I said, well, Miles, I said, look, this could happen. I've got a bit of support. I've got some good support within the advisory board. I think I've got a good stab at this. And he said, well, what would you need? And I said, well, I'd need X amount of days a year and I need some TAS. It's probably going to come to this number. And he went, he just said, well, either go do it, and if you get elected, I'll find the money.
Nice.
and that happened, and the rest, you say, is history. So it wasn't planned. And interesting as well is that I wasn't ever sure I'd win the election, because it was a 3-way election against two, as myself, and two incredibly strong candidates who both would have made incredible presence. I think, David Venn at Kinetic and Alan Milchamp, who heads up Synoptic. Those guys were, they're very, very good leaders. So it was, it was far from given in my mind. In fact, far from it. I thought, if I come a close third, that's probably okay. But no, what happened, and then I found out, and the next day I sort of sat down with Emma Jane Taylor at .the who's head of secretariat, most people might know, and go, right, what do I need to know, Emma Jane? What do I need to know? Come on, EJ, tell me a lot, and it was at that point I thought, right, I need to go and understand all this a lot more. And funnily enough, I spent that Christmas then, very sadly, at an empty house around the dining room table, reading the memorandum of articles of association registered at Company House and all the other INCOSE UK stuff, like the MOU with INCOSE and everything. Right, trying to understand how this thing worked.
Yeah, and then it does. It's certainly very healthy for the organisation that these elections are contested and that there are great candidates there, and that it isn't just searching around for somebody to do it. That actually multiple people want to do it.
Yeah, we've been there a couple of times, and that is that's the one of the one of the things we still got to resolve somehow is how do we get people to want to stand. We do get people that do want to stand. Don't get me wrong, we do. And even in some of the years where we've only really ended up with a single candidate, there have been others that have looked at it. But there is, it comes with a lot of sacrifice. You're there for, it's 6-year commitment. You're 2 years as president-elect, you're 2 years as president, you're there 2 years as the immediate past president. Okay, the burden goes down as immediate past president. honestly, but there's still an expectation, and you've committed to the membership to do stuff. You've committed to INCOSE UK. You've committed to the council members to lead it effectively. The other thing is you've committed to INCOSE internationally to support various things. That's part of the memorandum of understanding. So it is not an insignificant challenge, and it's it comes at you have to have a benevolent employer that's willing to support it. I think I calculated that I would need something like 50 days, and it actually wasn't really me. I'll give due thanks to Alan Harding there. He did a full-on business case when he stood for president, and very, very kindly shared with me some of the thinking around numbers, what he thought, and I wasn't able to do that myself. So I think it calculated out I would need something like 50 odd days, which could be split from some of my time, some I'd need from DSTL, originally. And then, we need to do conference attendance, there's TNS, there's councils to attend. This was all pre sort of COVID and certainly pre this kind of thing being regular formats. We didn't have virtual meetings back then, bluntly. We didn't have the capacity to do it, the capability. So, so I think it was something like 50 odd days, fair bit of travel. There is an expectation from INCOSE that you'll support IS or IW or both where you can. So that's, there's a week in the States twice a year, or a week in the States for IW, and then generally, there are other venues, and you don't have to go to all of them. But there is kind of an expectation you'll get support to do the symposiums and that, because you're representing INCOSE UK, and that's the biggest factor. So there is kind of an expectation for that too.
And with that sort of representation, because there are all these members in the UK, and they need that guy who is representing them over there.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you kind of have to impress on other chapters and impress upon the centre, the centre organisation that the MOU chapters, the international chapters are a bit unique. They are very different from the way that you can or would lead an American chapter. Now that's kind of understood, but it's much better understood now. Certainly with the employment of a full-time CEO, chief operating officer type thing that they've got now. But I remember having conversations at an IS at one point with somebody who will very much remain nameless, although some of the listeners may know who it is. But, I was asked, well, why do you need to create money in INCOSE UK? Why do you need to do that? Everything's done here. And I went, well, no, it's not. I said, you are on the west coast of the United States. You're 8 to 10 hours behind us. How's that any use to somebody based in the UK on a day-to-day basis? It isn't. So there's certain things we have to provide in the UK. Certain things our members want in the United Kingdom. We have a relationship with different professional institutions in a different way that you do over here. Chartership, which is called professional engineer in the United States, although it's a kind of an equivalent, it's done very differently in the UK to the way it is in the United States. So the other thing is that INCOSE in the United States runs the tax affairs of the chapters for it. Now we have to do our own. So there are things you just have to do differently, and the larger you come, the more of that you have to kind of have available to you. So sometimes, there is, whilst you get on it, and it is a meeting of friends. I was incredibly lucky to have coincided with most of Gary Rodler's time, for example, and Dave Long's time, and Alan's time, of course. During my time on the chapter and then president, and they were very good relationships. But sometimes you've got to have a strong conversation.
Yeah, and that sort of public facing, so a government minister or an MP or BBC News, like these types of organizations, when they they don't know what systems engineering is, and they think they need to speak to someone to give a statement for a sort of a news item and things. To me, I think it is very important that the local chapters or the country-based chapters talk in a language and use terms in a way that they are familiar with, and can map you to Institute of Mechanical Engineers or these other institutions.
Yeah. And I think you hit on a thing there that I think we need to embrace at some time, and the IfSE concept will better enable this, in my opinion, which is one of the reasons I'm really supportive of it. We've always struggled with how do we deal with matters of policy in the UK, and I don't mean about INCOSE or systems engineering policy, but engineering policy in the UK. How do we get that influence? How do we put out a policy statement that comes from us as an institution, rather than being seen to be the expression of the individual president and the organisation that they come from? So we have to be on par with the rest of the UK institutions to do that. So a good leap forward. Yeah, we get a voice now through the National Engineering Policy Centre, of course, with the Royal Academy of Engineering. But that's as a collective. That means the president signs the letter with all of the other PEI presidents, and that's a fantastic thing. That's really good. That's the first bit of saying, look, we have credibility. Look who we are sitting with, who we're talking with. This is the kind of influence we're now wielding. But if you really want to start going to the next level, you've got to think, right, what as a UK engineering institution that represents systems engineering in the UK, what is the policy that we want to present to politicians, to the rest of industry? Do we have that central policy? How are we going to create that? How do we think about how we might want to put specific systems engineering advice to a minister? I was very fortunate enough a couple of years ago now to write to my local MP following something with the Royal Academy of Engineering, and got airtime with Greg Smith up in Buckingham to talk to him about engineering, and almost chest prod him a little bit. But you've got to have that clear idea in your head about what your policy is. What do systems engineers care about? What do they want to see government doing? And again, you can't do that from a point of view where you might seem to be something that's just a small bolt-on from something that's run entirely from the United States. INCOSE has incredible influence in the United States. Incredible influence in the United States. Has got good influence globally. Don't get me wrong, but there is a delta, I think, when it comes to wanting to truly influence engineering policy, or trying to influence government to take a policy, an industrial policy, far more seriously. UK is dreadful at industrial policy, bluntly. And we need to drive government to change that. It's not something government really thinks too much about. The Department of Business, on whatever guise it is at any one time, is, in my opinion, backward in doing that. It seems to be reluctant to want to do it. But come on, this is a nation of creators. How many startups we've got going on? We can start up tons of things with brilliant ideas in this country. It's getting those startups to scale up and then into leveraging that technology and building it here that we don't really do well. It kind of topples off. And I speak from the experience of having been in one that kind of went down that trajectory for a while.
Yeah, and then sort of providing that expertise to, like, if your average MP, I think they have a law degree, and that's fine and well, but being that person who can whisper in the ear advice that is based on maybe our way of thinking, or a more systems engineering approach.
Well, we're seeing some things coming. There's some light in the tunnel. Towards the end of my term of presidency, I received a number of calls, personal calls, but nonetheless they were coming to me personally, but albeit because I'd had exposure as INCOSE UK president. Let's be blunt. Asking me about what was my view on systems thinking, how could we inject it into government, what examples could we share where systemic thought was helping things, for example. And so those opportunities come. It will be great to see INCOSE UK Institute for Systems Engineering start to develop those policies that say, this is what we really want to see. This is how we want to see things coming into schools. I want to start seeing systems engineering modules in academia, those kind of things.
No, that's really good. And then you mentioned that DSTL were almost encouraging you to go become president. What benefits were they seeing for that? Like, why would they sort of want to invest, essentially be paying your salary, but you're off supporting INCOSE UK?
Really. So DSTL, for any listener that might not know, is the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory. It's an agency within UK MOD, and it's kind of almost it's an internal critical eye on some of the stuff that MOD does. It also supports other government departments as well. I was lucky enough to work with other government departments in my relatively short time there. Now, one of it's all about the UK PLC in many respects. So DSTL encourages, and as you sort of get more senior roles, almost demands you to engage with academia, with industry, with the professional engineering institutions. They want you to be chartered if you're an engineer. They want you to be chartered, I think, for operational analysis and things like that. They want you to be that. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, it demonstrates their support to you growing as an engineer, an analyst, or scientist, whatever your profession is. Secondly, it demonstrates to the UK PLC the competence of the workforce. If you have got if all of your senior engineers, your engineering fellows, or whatever, they're all chartered engineers, it is telling you something about the competence of that group of engineers. Can't get away. You'd expect accountants to be chartered, wouldn't you? You know, if you're going to some money, and that's the expectation. So it's a way of saying back to the public and to the politicians whose money it is that we are spending. Is invested in us. They're paying our salaries. And saying, look, you are hiring competent people here who are doing things on behalf of the nation, and we've got highly competent people doing this on behalf of the nation and spending your tax pounds.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
There is a give and get. For me personally, I mean, obviously, it exposed me to a whole number of things, frankly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you could almost apply this to any field of endeavor, that to be involved with your professional institution is likely going to lead to better things. Like,
oh, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt.
Can I ask around sort of your career? So right now you work in rail, but you've been in defence, and you mentioned automotive at the beginning of your career. Like, has that been deliberate, or that you wanted to be in these different domains?
It became deliberate. It's become deliberate. It didn't necessarily start that way. It's become deliberate for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, let's take the discipline of systems engineering. John will tell you sometimes, John Holt that is, will put his hat on, for those that know John Stetson, and he'll speak very passionately about systems engineering, and he'll say it's the application, the implementation of common sense in engineering. Only the thing is, it's not that common. He'll flippantly say, but there's a bit of truth in that, quite frankly. But if you think about it, it's systems engineering is not about one domain. It is relevant to every engineering domain you can think of. Any manufacturing business, production business, infrastructure, rail being part of that infrastructure thing. It doesn't matter what man-made systems you're engaging with. Systems engineering can provide value to the outcomes that whatever business it is you're in, or whatever industry you're in, it can provide value to the outcomes that they're seeking to. So for me, it's become a thing. I like to engage with complex problems. The harder, the better. The more it stretches my head, the better. I'm grey-haired for a reason, I like to say. And what that means is sometimes, if you really want to test yourself as a systems engineer, for me, that means not just sticking to the same domain and say, right, I worked in the atomic weapons establishment for 6 years, and I went to DSTL and worked on all sorts of defence type things and other government things. And I went back to a defence company. I then went to an Oxford University spin out, where I was introducing it from ground up. There's nothing there when we arrived. And then now into rail. And my view is, if I am any good at what I do, I should be able to practice this to a proficient expert level in any domain, because the concept of systems engineering just makes sense. and
Yeah.
that's what it's been for me. And so my career has been about not necessarily climbing a promotional ladder in one particular organisation, and I absolutely think that's a fantastic thing to do. For me, it's been more about how much better as a systems engineer can I be, and an engineering leader for that matter, because it extends to both, by engaging in problem spaces where I actually really don't know much about the engineering side behind it. You know, I knew nothing about rail 3 years ago. I'm not sure I know much more. Really, I mean, I do, but you know, there's only so much you can really learn in 3 years.
Yeah, and for that railway line, I guess to help the audience, this is a railway line that sort of exists but has gaps in it, and you're filling them in.
So it's an incredible project, and it's an incredible systems project. We're going to link Oxford with Cambridge. There's incredibly compelling reasons to do so. If you want to go and look at the East West Rail website, you can see it. There's a reason it was in the last budget statement. It's an incredibly compelling project to do, to link these two centres of academic excellence, along with Milton Keynes in the centre, which was pre-COVID one of the largest growth cities in the United Kingdom, and a lot of tech around that area.
And I was an undergraduate at Oxford, and I used to ride that bus from Oxford to Cambridge, and it's a very terrible journey.
So it's a compelling thing to do, and in a different way to other rail projects. This is not about actually rail movement and rail travel. It's about releasing economic benefit, bluntly, and that means that, unlike a lot of infrastructure projects, actually a lot of government projects full stop, this has huge treasury support, and you can see that in the press. You read it. It's got, so that's a compelling reason for doing it. What's the compelling systems engineering reason here? Well, as you kind of alluded to there, we've got a bit of railway between Oxford and Bletchley that is under construction. The earthworks were mainly there from the old varsity line that existed up until the beaching cuts of the 60s. So most of the embankment we've been able to reuse. There are bits of railway we could use. We're putting a new station in there, and you know, HS2 have just completed the earthworks and the embankments and the bridges for the overpass of HS2 in the area we will cross over. We will interface with. So that's ongoing, and that will enter into service within the next year and a bit, I think, at the moment. So you've got that bit, and that's been delivered by an East West Rail Alliance led by Network Rail Capital, and it predates the sort of East West Rail company set up. You've then got a bit which is essentially Bletchley to Bedford, the Marston Vale line it's called. It is a small commuter railway. It's been beset by a number of problems. It's had base replacement now for at least last year. It's about to go back into operation again. Some issues with the company that were looking after trains and things like that. But so it's been kind of a bit of a mismatch for the last year or so. And also it's slow. It stops every station. It's a bit suboptimal if you want to get a decent sort of link in. But it's existing operational railway, so you've got a bit that's under construction, nearly completing construction on the back end, looking into the service. A bit that is operational, okay, even though it's not really been running trains for a year. It's going back to running trains now, I think. It started. In fact, it has, I think, restarted. And then you've got this bit from Bedford out to Cambridge where there is nothing. The old varsity line, most of it's been built over, so you can't reinstate that. You can't claim it. It's not. And then you've got to think about whether it's, you know, we've had to look at route options. And again, if you want to, if listeners want to go look at that, go look at East West Rail website. Let's see what all that stuff is. You know, I'm not here representing East West Rail, so I'm not really doing it other than the systems engineering thing. So, but when you look at that, what an excellent problem space for a systems engineer to be working in. And I'm blessed to have a small but very, very good systems engineering team. It's the head of systems engineering for in my bit of the jigsaw. There is a guy called Steve Turner, who is the professional development director for INCOSE UK. And you know, he heads a very small but very, very competent team. alongside having a technical partner, which is where most of the systems engineering horsepower is done. And again, so yeah, it is, and I think Steve sees what I do, which is when I originally joined us as the head of systems engineering and now the head of systems and digital and other things, is that we've got a really good, fantastic systems challenge to be involved in. It's compelling. It does hurt the head.
Yeah. I mean, there's serious interactions with communities, and it is not a pure technical challenge, I imagine.
No, it isn't. I don't know. Fortunately, unfortunately, I don't get that involved with that bit. That's not my particular job. We've got a very gifted team that work in that communications and interaction space, and they do that brilliantly. But you're right. If you look at all the interface points we have, we're interfacing with all of the major north-south transport mechanisms, east and west coast main line, HS2, the rail ones, then the M1, the A1M, the M40. We're meddling in, we're interfacing into the network rail area. So as I said, East Coast West Coast main line, the West Midlands main infrastructure area. Then you've got major rivers, Grand Union Canal as well. So there's a whole bunch of environmental things in there. We've got to go across, we've got to interact with the floodplain across Bedford, and then we've got to go into Bedford town itself, and huge challenges around how do we deal with going into Bedford St John's increasing capacity, and we're right next to a major hospital.
Yeah.
How we're gonna handle that? As systems challenges go, it's fantastic one to be involved in.
Yeah, and I would encourage any listener who hasn't looked at a map of the UK, just look at where Oxford is and where Cambridge is and then where London is, and just look at the amount of infrastructure that must be emanating out of London to the north, and Ivan's railway line is crossing all of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's compelling in a number of ways, because it's not just about how you link Oxford and Cambridge. The potential then is to go, you can then engage right out east to the ports on the east coast. You can get down into Wales and down into Cornwall. So you get you can enable a truly holistic east-west connection by having this railway. So and that then that gives you opportunities to consider, and decisions haven't been made on this yet, and but how you might bring freight rail into things. So there is a really compelling case for the railway. It's an incredibly exciting systems challenge to be involved in, and I'm lucky enough to have been originally asked to lead systems engineering and assurance, for the first year and a half, and for the last almost 2 years now to head up systems engineering and digital engineering and bring the performance piece in, and sort of with 4 teams and safety for quite a while sat with me, and may do again. So yeah, it's a great time.
Thank you. So we're coming up on time now, Ivan. Are there any other remaining thoughts you have that you want to share with the audience?
I think I would encourage any listener that isn't a member of INCOSE to go and explore it. INCOSE UK, INCOSE, just go and have a look. You'll find a lot of like-minded people. For those that are members, get involved, get volunteer to do something. Volunteer bandwidth is never without reward. It is incredibly rewarding. It is a great place to sort of think about where you want to go with your career, and open your eyes. You meet, I've met people who now I consider to be very, very close friends. I've been blessed to sit alongside and to workshop and to meet and talk with some really, really gifted engineers, and to be exposed to some of their thinking, and that's definitely had an impact on the way that I think. So whatever you volunteer for will be a really, really exciting thing to do. The other thought, I think, is the one that for some reason I always forget that we enabled to get going in my time, which was, I think, is the real key for systems engineering and any engineering organization is that we we identified that the Dutch chapter had a youth division, and David Venn, and who I mentioned earlier, who was one of my rivals for presidency at the time, and Kirsty Ackroyd-Wallace, who succeeded me as president, took that and made that happen, and enabled the what we called the Early Careers Forum to get going. And now that's a big thing, and that's all run by young early career systems engineers. It's not a youth forum for us. We recognise that systems engineering is often a secondary or tertiary career move for folk in the UK. But it provides a means for early career systems engineers to get engaged and come and have a look. And they have a voice in council. You know, we wanted them to have it right from the outset. We said when we set this up, we're going to give them a voice on the council, and they do that, and it's good. So I encourage, if you're listening to this and you're involved in systems engineering in the UK, get involved in INCOSE in some way, whether it's early careers, where it's supporting professional development with Steve Turner, you know, and promoting not just chartership, incorporated engineer professional registration, but the whole concept of certification, and that, get involved in that, get involved in our events teams, get involved, you know, with all of the other activities we do. Outreach is back, you know, I mean, it's a fantastic thing to look at how we interact with other organisations. There are just so many things that you can do in the technical side. You know, you volunteer to do things in the technical side, you get to work alongside John Holt, who I think is, you know, certainly one of the most influential systems engineers in this country. I think, you know, there are others, but John has a particular way of presenting systems engineering to the public, which I think is quite unique.
And he makes it accessible. He makes it accessible to those who don't have a computer science degree or these.
No, they don't. And he, you know, he is. If there's a compelling reason to go and have a look at John Holt, you know, I mean, who wouldn't want to be engaged and want to work in a business where he works? You know, let's be honest. So I think, you know, just my message is it's not a light thing to say it does change your life in some respects, but it has in mine. You know, in many ways, it's changed how I think about what I want to do. So it's been an incredible experience, incredible time.
Oh, well, thank you, Ivan, and to those listening, please take the advice that Ivan has given us, and have a great career in systems. Thank you, Ivan.
Thank you very much, Joshua, and whoever you are out there listening in, thanks for listening. And Josh is doing a great concept here. It's fantastic. Thanks for inviting me on.
Great. Well, I hope you enjoyed the episode. And just a reminder to sign up to the newsletter on joshuasutherland.com/newsletter, and it will keep you up to date with the latest episodes and other interesting things. And there's a free gift for you when you sign up. So see you soon. Bye.